I didn't take it. So I kind of know what it's like ish, but I haven't had to take it before. So.
Okay, so let's talk about kind of how these things are set up. The first thing to know, this is true for both of these, is that these are both concept-based tests. All right. So what do I mean by that? They're concept-based tests. The idea is that the material in them is not particularly difficult. All right. Both verbal and math on both these exams test you on kind of a core, a core set of basic skills. None of which go past, maybe 10th or 11th grade, something like that. All right. So on the GRE, those concepts are going to be vocabulary, right? Reading comp. And then the part that, terrifies everybody, which is, math, which is everything from, and generally I kind of break the math up into maybe 4 different categories. You've got your arithmetic. Well, no, let's call it say number. Let's call it number sense, number properties, things like that. That's the first category. The second one is algebra. We can actually group arithmetic here as well. Next one's algebra. All right, so the number stuff is where you're actually talking about kind of actual values and how the numbers work. Algebra is where you're talking about, obviously your variable-based questions, right? This is stuff that might get up to quadratics, might get to, some ratio or percent stuff with unknown quantities, things like that. All right, and then you've got geometry, and then you've got, what you might call miscellaneous. In the miscellaneous, we might throw in here some of the more difficult question types. So you might get, for example, probability. This is going to show up probably a little bit more on the GMAT than the GRE, but you see it in more difficult questions on the GRE as well. Probability, combination type of questions, counting methods, Venn diagrams, sequences and series. And then maybe some, more kind of a slightly advanced statistics, like not even advanced, but things like standard deviation. All right. So the idea, because these are concept-based tests, you want to be able to identify quickly what is being asked. All right. Where people tend to go wrong is that, hi May, welcome to the classroom. So where people tend to go wrong with these things is to kind of take a bit of a brute force approach without kind of knowing how things are being asked. All right. So what you really want to be able to do is think like the people who are writing these exams. All right. The idea is, what do they want you to find? All right. So things are going to be set up in kind of a structured way so that there are kind of clues within the questions and clues within the answers. And if you kind of know what you're looking for, it can be, considerably helpful. So because this is a session based on timing, we're not going to go too much into content, but we're going to talk about kind of how to think about questions in order to kind of, structure and manage your time effectively, from the outset. And that in itself can, end up raising the baseline, 10, 15 points before you even get into kind of fine tuning the, the content. So that said, let's, all right, let's see how the test setup from a timing perspective. The first thing you want to be aware of is that both the GRE and the GMAT are computer adaptive, but in different ways. All right, so what does that mean? For the GRE, the computer adaptive aspect, it's partially adaptive. So you're going to start out with with a median level, a median difficulty section. Depending on how you do on that section, because there's going to be 2 sections for the verbal and math, then you may come across an experimental section as well. All right. So because you're starting with a median section, depending on how you do, that's going to affect what happens with the second section. You don't know exactly kind of what the cutoff is going to be, but if you end up with, say, 11 out of 20 questions correct, all right, that's pretty much, kind of a median score. So that probably ensures that the next section is also going to be, the same level. All right. But if you get something like, 15 out of 20, that'll be good enough to advance to a more difficult section for the, for the next one. Whereas if you only get something like a 5 out of 20, all right, then you might get an easier section the next time around. All right. For the GMAT, it's actually question specific. It's adapted by question. So the GMAT, unlike the GRE, is going to adapt your, the next question according to how you've done with the previous one. All right. So because of that, the thing is, you want to kind of plan how to make the test as easy as possible as you're going through. All right. Now the GRE, you have the ability to go and flag questions and come back to them. All right. So what you want to do is basically say, you want to identify, and this is what you're going to do in practice, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, kind of which fundamentals you're comfortable with, which ones you're not comfortable with. All right. So from a timing perspective, if you know that, say, you are not very good with, say, work rate time questions or rate time distance questions, right? You get to a question like that, you want to say, okay, is this a question that's going to be, something that I'm comfortable answering? Or is it going to be something that's going to spend, that's going to take me about, 4, 5, 6 minutes to do? Because the thing is, if you do not, if you don't feel that you can, handle a question within the allotted time, it may not be worth doing. On the GMAT, for example, you can miss, and this is, again, different by, from test to test, but you might be able to miss, say, 10 to even 15 questions total and still get, over 700. On the GRE, if you say if you miss, say, 5 questions on the first section, the median section, and that's good enough to send you up to the harder section, then you can still miss, you can miss a bunch on the hard section because you've already raised your baseline. All right. So a big part of this is basically kind of strategizing how you are going to skip questions that you're not comfortable with. Now, that's not saying that that's like, everything involved in doing well in the test. Yes, you want to, you want to have a good sense of the fundamentals. If you don't know how to do ratios, and yeah, by all means, practice ratios. Because ultimately, you want to get to the point where you are able to anticipate every type of question that you'll come across. All right. You don't want to be surprised by anything. That's the ultimate goal. All right. The ultimate goal is not to get everything right, but it's to basically feel that you know what is going to be asked, and that you have kind of a set of solutions or strategies, for handling all those. All right. Okay. So that said, let's kind of figure out how you would go about choosing which questions to, to handle and which ones to come back to. Now, again, on the GMAT, you cannot come back to it. All right. So, so at some point you're going to want to guess. On the GRE, though, you can come back to it. But, on the GRE, you might want to at least, take your best guess, flag it, so that you're not actually leaving anything blank. All right, so do your best to answer all questions, but not leave questions blank. Now, strategically, how you do this makes a difference. You don't want to get to the point, where you have, say, 10 questions at the end of the test and you're completely rushing through everything. You want to be strategic about which ones you're picking and choosing, all right? So that you can actually say, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to cap this to say, like, whatever, a minute and a half or 2 minutes. I'm not comfortable with where this question is going. I'm going to move on to one that I'm more comfortable with. You don't want to get stuck. You ideally want to allot the same amount of time for a question at the very beginning of the test, as for a question at the very end of the test. And something to keep in mind as well, you're not going to know how you're doing. All right. I know a lot of people get things like test anxiety, that tends to, can throw people off. that people get anxious about, the prospect of getting test anxiety, things like that. You want to do the best you can to basically kind of leave a question, just let it go once you're done with it. All right. So let's take a look at a couple of things in this regard. First of all, timing on the GMAT quant, and all the strategies that we're going to talk about here, they pertain to verbal as well, but they're kind of more clearly defined on the quant section. All right, so on the quant section, on a GMAT question, you'll have about 2 minutes per problem. On the GRE quant, you'll have about 145 per question. Again, it's a little bit trickier on the verbal to kind of figure that out because you've got reading comprehension questions, which take longer because you have to read the passage, and then you've got kind of the quick vocabulary ones. But on the quant section, it's generally going to be something like this. Then you can break this down a little bit further. On the GMAT quant, if you've got 2 minutes per problem, that's more the case for the problem solving. On the data sufficiency type of problems, you might allow more like 145. All right. The GRE is probably, we'll say 145 per problem, but maybe a little bit shorter, maybe a minute and a half on the quantitative comparisons. Okay. Okay. So when you encounter a problem, there's kind of a general set of strategies that can help you kind of maximize your timing. The first thing, don't worry if you run over. It's okay to run over a little bit, but you don't want to run over too far. All right. So when I'm saying 2 minutes per problem on, say, the GMAT quantitative, that's an average. So you might find that there's a really tough question that you've got a pretty good chance of getting right. So for something like that, maybe it's okay to allow 2.5 minutes, but you don't want to allow like 3 or 4 minutes. All right. And some of the, when you guys are going through your, your practice, some of the practice sites are better than others in terms of kind of like, diagnostic stuff. Like Christina, have you started doing any actual studying yet, or not really yet?
I couldn't figure out where my mute button was.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah, I have with a little bit with verbal. I've pretty much just been studying words at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a couple books to do the diagnostics, but I haven't decided which one to start with and which one will be better for me to, like, I guess, gauge where I really am, since it's been a while.
Which books do you have?
Let's see. I have the one that ETS does, and then what is the second one? I want to say it looks like Barron's to me, but no, the Princeton Review one and the Manhattan Prep.
Yeah, they're all pretty good. And then they're all the only thing is the ones that are not ETS are going to be slightly, because they don't quite know the algorithms, they don't, they've got different staff. So you're going to find that the the writing might be a little bit different, but they're they're all reputable firms. They're all close. They'll try to approach it. So what I would say, if you're practicing timing to start out, because I know you're just getting started. To start out, you want to just do general practice to kind of, train yourself to recognize the fundamentals, train yourself to kind of recognize what kinds of things are being asked and how they're going to ask them. Like, for example, you want to get to the point where you recognize that if you're dealing with, say, an average problem, like an arithmetic mean problem, it might involve getting, the total and working from there. And that's also true of the ratio problem. Right? Or if you're dealing with a quadratic, you might want to like quickly recognize you need to use the FOIL method if you remember that. All right. If you don't remember it, well, then just study up and all the stuff will come back to you. I know it's probably been a few years since you've actually kind of touched on this stuff. So you want to get the fundamentals down. And then when you get to the point where you're actually kind of studying for timing, actually give yourself, time drills. See if you can actually do the problems within, again, say 2 minutes for the GMAT, about 145 for the GRE. All right, and then try cutting yourself off. Say, okay, I didn't get into 145. Okay, I'm going to move on. That doesn't mean that in the actual test that you can't actually go and spend a little bit more time to actually get things right. But you do want to know what it feels like. You want to know what that minute 45 actually feels like. All right. Also, some of the online prep, ETS does not, trying to think if it does or not. I don't think that ETS actually has, when you actually take a practice test, I don't think it actually gives you information about timing, which is too bad because it should. I'm trying to recall if it does or not. I don't think so. Because sometimes you can, for some of these, like whether it's Magoosh or Manhattan, if you actually kind of sign up for their online, their online resources, you can take a diagnostic and it'll tell you, okay, you spent like 345 of this question, so you want to kind of recognize how not to do that again. All right. So yeah, kind of keep that in mind. But it's like when you're doing kind of just working through practice questions in the book, you can kind of drill yourself on your own, just to try to get the timing down. That said, let's talk a little bit about strategies and how to kind of approach strategy in terms of timing. Starting out with the quant section, and this is pretty much applicable for both the GRE and the GMAT. Okay, so here's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you're reading the question carefully. A lot of people kind of take this for granted, or they'll kind of start solving the problem before actually, actually kind of internalizing the question. Make sure that you've actually read it carefully, and it's okay to actually invest another, say, 10 seconds or whatever into making sure that you actually know what's being asked. Because the thing is, you don't want to have to keep going back to the question to try to figure out if you've actually internalized it all right. All right. So read carefully. 2, identify what is actually being asked. This is also something that seems like you should take it for granted, but a lot of people don't. Like for example, if it says if you spent a minute and a half solving for 3x, and then it asks you about 2y, you don't want to answer 3x because that's answering the wrong question. And there will invariably be an answer choice which is geared towards, tricking you with the wrong answer. All right. Now, here's an important one. Identify the concepts. What are the concept or concepts being tested? All right. Now, this is important because the thing is, like I was saying at the very beginning of all this, you want to be able to think like the people who write these things. You want to know what they're actually testing you on. All right. So if you look at, for example, if you've got a question that's something to this effect, maybe you've got, Christina or May, I'm not sure, how you are with your, quant fundamentals at the moment, but say you have something on this idea. Say you've got something like, 4 to the 2x, I'm trying to write without a mouse here, so it's a bit 2x minus 1 equals 64 to the, I don't know, 3x plus 2. What you want to do, you want to be able to identify the concept or concepts, look at this, say, oh, well, okay, fine. This is going to be clearly, a question about exponents, right? You've got something raised to a power. All right. So that's going to be the primary concept that you want to be able to identify quickly. And then you want to know what strategies tend to go with which primary concept. Now, obviously, we don't have time to talk about all those here. That's for kind of longer tutoring courses or studying whatever else. But you do want to know that generally they're going to give you clues to kind of help you out. So for example, in this case, you got to ask yourself, why are they giving you a number like 4 and a number like 64? Well, it turns out that 64 is actually a power of 4. All right. So instead of writing that as 64, you can really write that as 4 to the third power. And now what you've done, now you can say, well, okay, this is actually 4 to the 2x minus 1 equals 4 cubed to the 3x plus 2. So what we've actually done is, figured out a way to kind of, make this a more simple question, something that kind of tests you on core concepts, which is really what happens when you, raise 4 to a power, and you've, gotten one side equal to another side, which makes it a lot easier to work with.
Unrelated, I was so proud of myself for remembering that was.
See, there you go. See, and then, it comes back. All right. So now it's like, oh, well, it's okay, fine. 4 to the 2x minus 1. I can't do anything on the left. On the right, I've got a power raised to a power, which means you multiply, if you remember that. So that's going to be 4 to the 9x plus 6. We got a power to a power, you multiply. 4 to the 2x minus 1. And now you've got something that's, relatable and easy. So now you just have a basic algebra 1 problem, which is really 2x minus 1 equals 9x plus 6, and then you can solve that. That's just a pre-algebra kind of thing because the base is the same. So identifying the concept or concept being tested and find clues. So let's kind of add that. All right, so 4, look for clues. So the clue here is that 4 and 64 have something in common. They have something in common in terms of a fundamental concept. And by recognizing that quickly, you can, improve your timing a lot. So instead of just going into it blindly and saying, oh, well, I have no idea what they're actually asking here, recognize that pretty much everything they give you is going to be for a reason. All right? Look for clues. You might also say in this case, this is often true for both quantitative comparisons on the GMAT and data sufficiency on the, quantitative comparisons on the GRE and data sufficiency on the GMAT. See if you can make one side look like the other. And that's exactly what we've done here. We took a 4 and a 64, and we related it via a concept. All right? Okay. Next, once you've kind of identified the concept, look for clues. I should also say simplify, and that's kind of these are 3, 4, and 5 kind of go together. Simplification is what we did in kind of the second line down. The next is what I call a difficulty assessment, and this is important because this is going to help you determine whether or not you're actually going to do a problem right then or not. All right. Whenever you look at a question, you want to give yourself a fair, chance to figure out whether or not it's a question that you like or not. All right. And generally what I say to do is kind of give it maybe a 1 through 4 rating. So what do I mean by this? Well, okay, if something is a level 1 question, you look at it and you're like, I know how to do that. And I'm most positive that I will be able to do it in the, in the given amount of time. If you're taking the GRE, there'll be a minute 45. So if you look at a question and you're like, oh, this is easy stuff, I know what to do. That would be a level 1. A level 2 is something that's a bit more challenging, but you generally think that you'll be able to get there. All right, so like for example, maybe you took a look at this question right here and you were like, okay, wait, I think I know my exponent rules, but it's going to take me a little while to kind of figure out what they're asking here. So for these kinds of questions, first of all, you want to give yourself a fair amount of time to make the determination of how difficult you think the question is. And whether to attempt it. All right. So something that's one or two, you should absolutely attempt it. And again, you don't want to make the determination too quickly. You don't want to like look at a question and say, "Oh yeah, I've got this. It'll be fine," and then end up getting stuck later. You want to take a break, read the question carefully, make sure that you've kind of done the initial work here and steps 1 through 5, and then say, "Okay, yeah, I've got this." All right. So a 1 is going to be something easy. 2 is going to be a bit more challenging, but you could probably get there. Now, for a 1 and 2, it's okay to give yourself more than a minute 45, or in the GMAT case, 2 minutes, to solve the question, to solve the problem. because you generally feel like you're going to be on the right track. And at some point, you're going to get to a level where hopefully, you actually were on the right track and you can come up with an answer, or you're close enough that you can actually make, a good solid guess. Now, next level up would be, I've got a newcomer. Hello. Next level up would be a level 3. Say level 1 is easy, level 2 a bit more challenging. So level 3 is, and here's where you start to get into like the potentially difficult categories. A level 3, and again, you don't want to make any of these determinations until you've given yourself a fair shot at least taking a look at the question. Level 3 is going to be something where it looks tough, but you've got some ideas. All right. So it's something that at least at the outset, you think it's probably worth at least giving it a stab. All right. So for example, maybe sort of like, maybe you're not comfortable with like work rate time problems, but the core concepts, and it looks like it's presented in a way that you can probably, at least try out some of these core concepts. So for this kind of thing, you want to determine pretty quickly whether or not it's going to get easier as you move along through the problem, or whether it's going to get harder. All right. So level 3 is the kind of thing where it's like, okay, I've spent maybe 20, 30 seconds reading the problem. I've say, now you've given yourself maybe like, a minute to do it, and things are not falling into place. If they're not falling into place, let it go. All right. For a level 3, you don't even need to like, take it all the way up to, up to 2 minutes. If things are not working out, they're not working out. And again, for the GRE, you've got an advantage here because you can actually flag something and come back to it. Whereas a GMAT, you can't. But again, remember, you can miss a lot of questions and still get really high scores. Again, on the GMAT, you can miss like, 10 or even in some cases up to 15 questions to turn, depending on the test, and still get, the equivalent of over, over 700. All right. Then a level 4 is either going to be you have no idea how to do it, or it'll take too long. So let me give you an example. Say for example, you didn't know a shortcut for adding all the numbers from say 1 to 300. All right. You know that you could do it, I mean, on the GRE, you've got a calculator to actually do it, right, by hand, but it'll take you the entire duration of the test and probably longer, right? So you're not going to do that. So at some point, you need to make a determination that, okay, I know there's a shortcut here, but I have no idea what it is, and I can't find it. So for something like that, just let it go. Or it could be something that you just do not know the concept. Like if you are somebody who hates like those Venn diagram questions, and you're like, okay, those throw me off every time, and I'm just not comfortable answering them. Again, give yourself maybe 20 seconds to make that determination, but if it's not comfortable, let it go. All right. And that's how timing works, because the thing is, you really want to focus on the questions that you are comfortable with. All right. We're not going to get into specific strategies because, I mean, we've got a whole bunch of like some of the previous seminars have dealt with some of those, as well as the upcoming ones. This is, this session is really more about kind of like, how to work with things at a high level, kind of like a bird's eye level. But you do want to keep in mind that, you are going to want to take a strategic approach, whether it's a verbal or a math question. So let's say there's 6 is difficulty assessment. Once you've determined that you're actually going to do this thing, then yeah, go and choose your strategies. And on the math side of things, so strategies might involve picking numbers, they might involve working backwards from the answer choices, they might involve just doing straight algebra. On the verbal section, if it's a reading comprehension question, that might involve doing doing targeted reading, right? Read for structure. Don't worry too much about details because details are going to take time. All right. For the reading comprehensions, and this is true both in the GRE and the GMAT, just make sure that you're getting the structure, the flow, and the main content of the passage as a whole, and of the individual paragraphs. That'll help you kind of lock into place where things are, and that'll help that'll move things quicker as well. You don't need to retain every single detail, because if you need a detail, you'll be asked for it, in the in a detail question. On the also on the verbal side of things, Christina, I know you mentioned that you've been doing a lot of vocabulary. I would keep that up. That's a great great baseline for for the GRE. I would also recommend doing things like word roots. Have you taken a look at like the Greek and Latin roots?
Yeah, that's been the piece that I'm like I've been pretty much just doing flashcards with individual words, and I've been debating, is it smarter for me to spend the time like grouping them by like, similar definitions, or whether I should start with the roots. Like I've just been doing individual words, but I'm debating whether there's like a way I should do it smarter to like within the time frame to.
I'll tell you. Here's what. Do you know when you're taking your test or not yet?
I was gonna shoot for taking one in May. I'm not applying till
Oh,
like December of this year, so I have a whole year to figure out
okay, you've
where I
got.
want to.
All
But
right.
I was thinking about like taking it in May to give myself 3 to 4 months to get there, and then seeing what that score was, and then maybe taking it a second time and like closer to the end of the year.
All right. So yeah, I
Or
mean,
maybe not
all
even.
right. Yes, yes, you've got quite a bit of time. So let me tell you what I
Mhm.
did on both the SAT tons of years ago when vocabulary actually mattered on that, and the GRE, which and I took the the older iteration. I mean, I took the GRE. It's been ages now. So back when they had analogies and antonyms, so vocabulary was even heavier of a focus than it is now, but it's still a pretty heavy focus. Although now it's all like words and context. But here's what I did, and I found it to be very effective. I basically took a long word list because you've got a lot of time, so you can so you don't need to limit it to like 300 or 400 words. You can do like one of the much longer lists if you want. I broke it up. I actually had a printout. I broke it up into lists of like 50 words or something like that, and then each day I would do a list, and then I would cross off the words I knew. I would circle the words I didn't know, and then at the end of the week I would come back and then just do a review of the list of the words on the list that I didn't know, and then I would kind of keep doing that in kind of a methodical sort of way. Um, I would sprinkle in. I don't think you need to do Latin, Greek, and Latin word stuff all the time, um, but I would definitely kind of incorporate it, just so that because those can be really helpful because any one Greek or Latin root can open the door to a whole bunch of words.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's what I would say. Okay, I think that that generally kind of wraps up the just generally say 30, 40 minutes. I will stick around here for a bit for any questions, bit of Q&A if anybody wants to stick around. I'll be here till another 20 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. But yeah, so I hope that gives you kind of a general overview of kind of like how to handle, how to think about timing and how to like be a little bit less intimidated by how these tests are actually set up. Because the thing is, you don't need to get everything right. You can miss a whole bunch of questions and still get phenomenal scores. The thing is, you just want to like, you want to go about these things methodically and basically try to anticipate how the test writers actually think about the test. If you do that, you're way ahead of the game. All right.
Thank you so much. Actually, this was really helpful, I
Sure,
think.
I'm glad. Yeah, and we've got. I'm trying to think. Let's see. We've got a whole bunch of. I'm trying to think of what the other ones are. I could tell you right now. 1 second. Let's see what the upcoming webinars are. Let's see.
Yeah, because I, for instance, didn't realize you could. When I start, like, I know I would put the pressure on myself of I have to answer everything. I didn't realize you can miss some and like, or even a few, and still like be in that range. So
Yeah. I mean,
even
here's
though
the
I
thing. You
had
don't, you don't, yeah, you don't want to leave them blank. You definitely want to
no,
guess. I mean, you want to take your best guess, but the thing is, yeah. So you don't want to like, get stuck with like, 6 unanswered questions because you spent so much time,
hmm
earlier on. But the thing is, you definitely don't have to get them right.
Yeah.
What you really want to shoot for, and obviously it's like you haven't taken your diagnostics yet, so you don't know kind of what your current baseline is, but like the first step is, make sure that you're, at least in the median section with that, with the first section, which means that you're getting, say, between say 9 and 12 out of 20 correct. Not saying that's where you want to stop, but that's going to at least ensure that the second section of the GRE is going to be the same level. Now, if you're able to get it up to say 14, 15, 16, probably not even 16, probably 14 or 15 right, will advance you to the next section, the harder one. And the harder one, I mean, again, you can miss several of those and have it not really affect things all that much. Because you've already kind of raised your baseline at that point. All right, let me take a quick look. Let's see. Okay, upcoming things. I talked about work rate time questions. All right, we're actually doing those on February 10th. Then reading comp on February 24th. So yeah. One thing I'd recommend as well. Have you taken a look at a GRE Prep Club?
Yes, actually, I just signed up yesterday or the day
Uh,
before.
which is probably where you found these.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so one thing that GRE Prep Club has, which is really useful, I can show you while I'm sharing the screen here. I think they've actually just revamped this forum to make it better. Okay, let's see here. If you click on pretty much any, excuse me, any forum link, and any random question, and GRE Prep Club, and if you go, see where it says question banks here.
Mhm.
If you click on that, they've actually just revamped this, so it's a nice filter which looks more like the GMAT one. You can basically, this has pretty much every question on from every resource, period. It's really, really, really good for that reason for practice. So for example, say you want to practice, I don't know, reading comprehension. You don't want to sell yourself short by going too easy, but you don't want too many overly difficult ones. So we'll start with reading with a medium level reading comps. All right. And then say you struggle with, I know a lot of people have difficulties with the science ones. All right. Okay. So we're going to filter on medium difficulty science reading comps. All right. And then let's go down here and just do ones from the official guides. Okay. So let's go with let's see here. Here's an official guide, third edition. And then, oh yeah, let's go the power prep test as well, because those are ETS materials. All right. Okay. Then you go down. This is very long. Go all the way down to the bottom. Click on search. And now every one of these is a question.
Oh wow.
All right. So what do we have here? I'd say yeah. So here, all right. This probably gives you about maybe 10 or so. But that's because I restricted it pretty heavily just to the one particular official guide and a couple of power preps. If I had just left it at say medium level reading comps, then I would have gotten hundreds of these things. Then you click on one of them, and here you go. You got your actual questions, right? And then there will also be discussion associated with the question. So if you want to get kind of strategy ideas, kind of think about how other people either attempted it or got it right, or kind of thoughts they have. So that kind of thing can be really useful. I'll show you one for the quantitative side as well. But this is by far the best the best online resource out there. Oh, one second. Okay, Cherry Quant. They need to fix their alignment. But yeah, so say Stay down here. You want to do like, difficult algebra questions, right? Search on those. And say we want to do those from, we'll use maybe Magoosh and Kaplan and maybe fictional guide ones as well. Search on these and boom, you get 20 trillion math questions. Well, okay, actually just 5 here because I had a lot of limited resource. But yeah, so I would definitely recommend using this as a resource in addition to the hard copy ones that you might have.
Yeah, I had no idea you could do that.
Yeah, and they've just, I think it's been within the last like week or two that they've fixed this filter thing up. But yeah, every question from pretty much every resource out there is on here, along with discussion. So yeah. Hold on 1 second.
Well, the funniest part is I only stumbled across the website because I was trying to figure out what the GRE score was for a specific school that I couldn't find it on their website, and this popped up, but I otherwise wouldn't have even known it was out there.
Yeah, it's odd for whatever reason. People have been like taking the GRE for years, and like most people know about this site, but most people don't know about this particular that you can actually give yourself basically infinite question banks here. Yeah, and that's a great resource. So yeah, I think between these and the hard copies, yeah, you'll be fine. So yeah, what I'd recommend is in terms of practice, I definitely recommend splitting verbal and math pretty much equally to start out. I don't recommend doing things like like maybe 1 week of verbal and 1 week of math. Try to combine them. Maybe like alternate it. Yeah, and then just kind of see at some point start taking diagnostic tests to kind of see where you're at, and then kind of set up a regular regular practice test regimen. Whether it's again you've got a lot of time, so you can do at this point maybe once a month or once every few weeks. You don't need to do like more than that at the moment. Just kind of see how things go.
Thank you so much again for everything.
Sure thing. All right, good luck studying, and yeah, so there will be another one of these in a couple of weeks. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye bye.